Thanks almost solely to Jim Henson, in the 1980s for kids, puppets were awesome. Whether you're talking about The Muppet Show, Sesame Street, Dark Crystal, or Labyrinth, puppets were in front of us all the time as 80s kids. And they had become so advanced and effective at conveying convincing storytelling, they were even putting them in the most famous movies of the decade. But aside from a few simple hand puppets, the advancement in puppeteering really didn't make it into the toy market until Mattel Toys came along in the latter half of the 1980s with the Boglins. And now here we are in 2023, and Tri-Action Toys has brought the Boglins back.
Hey, the name's Boglins, each sold separately, and we're looking for good homes. Maybe yours?
I never expected to see the Boglins again. Not because there was anything wrong with them, but they are a very esoteric little cult moment in 1980s toys. They weren't one of the big three like Transformers, He-Man, or G.I. Joe. They weren't even really like a franchise toy. They were a true toy in every sense of the word. They were something that you buy to play with at home that doesn't necessarily have a kind of continuity or movie or anything to it. It's just a pure engineered toy for fun. My brother had one, an original Mattel Boglin. I believe his name was Dwizork. And it was a lot of fun to play with. I mean, it was a foam rubber puppet, and it had these amazing eyes that would, move back and forth, not unlike the eagle eyes of Action Force or Action Man that Analog Toys has talked about a lot. But it was a really cool puppet to play with because you could apply it to a lot of different action figure lines. It was like this big monster that could come at your other action figures, or you could just play with it on its own and get good moving the mouth and the eyes at the same time. If you liked puppets and monsters, it was a really good toy. It was really fun. Unfortunately, those toys being made out of a sort of foam rubber material, they tended to deteriorate over time. They were a ticking time bomb toy that you weren't aware wasn't going to be with you into the future when you get into 2023. And many of those toys now go for high prices if you can find them just barely holding together. It's one of those kind of toys. But shocker of shockers, they're back. And they're back through Tri-Action Toys now rather than Mattel. The same designer, we interviewed him for Iconicon. I'll have a link to that video at the end of this video. But the original designer has come back and they are making brand new Boglins. They are the same size, they are the same concept, totally the same idea, just made out of better materials. So this Boglin is one of the ones from their Aliens line. They have your traditional Boglins that have come back out. So the characters like Dwizork and there's a few other guys, they're all back out again. And then there are these kind of subsets. I know there's a Halloween series and now there's this Alien series. And this is Dwizork, the Alien Boglin. The original Boglins came in a kind of crate box that looked like a wooden crate with these plastic bars that they were trying to get out of. Now the mainline Boglins still come in that kind of box. This Alien Boglin comes in a more sci-fi box that looks almost like a spaceship meets a cryogenic freeze chamber kind of thing. So the whole tone, the whole atmosphere of Boglins is still with the Tri-Action versions. The boxes are part of the experience. But the most important part is the puppet. And how does the puppet hold up today? Well, the new materials they're made out of seem to be more silicone based. So this puppet is going to last a lot longer into the future than the original Boglins did. And that's great. The mobility and everything of the puppet is still pretty much the same. So you've got your tail on the back, you've got your arms that are clipped in that really don't move all that well. I don't think they're intended to move, honestly, but they don't really, if you're trying to get a pivot point out of those, it's very difficult to get those shoulders to pivot. You might as well just accept those arms as kind of a, I don't know, almost like a passive bit of expression on the puppet. The main event of the puppet is still the mouth and the eyes and the brows. They work the exact same way as the originals did, as far as I can recall, because it's been a long time since I've been face-to-face with Dwizork from the original Boglins line. I don't have him here in the studio. My brother has him, if he still has him at all. I don't know if he fell to dust. I'm not really sure. But this new Boglin, it feels very much like those in terms of operating the puppet. However, I did notice some differences. So while you still have the same controls for the eyes and the brows, which is a series of plastic levers that make the eyes pivot back and forth left and right, and they make the brows furrow a little bit, the mouth itself is still hand operated. There is no special mechanism in there. You're just using your thumb to move his lower jaw. Now, again, I don't have a vintage Boglin to base this off of. I can only go from memory, and my memory is from when I was a small child, so I admit there might be some fallacy there. But from what I recall from that Boglin, because this one is made out of a silicone material, it is very floppy. And I feel like the foam rubber, while not having the same lifespan, might have had a little more strength in its shape. There's nothing fatally wrong with the material used here. It is a different tactile experience, though. The original foam rubber Boglin, I think, held its shape a little more in a passive way. This one, once you are operating it, it works just fine. But it is a very floppy material. I'll just put it that way. As far as operating it, it operates, like I said, the exact same way. It's, you know, it's a Boglin. However, I am noticing in this particular example, and I don't know if this is the way it works with all the Tri-Action Toys Boglins or just the one I got, but the eyes are very loosey-goosey in the sense that they operate just fine, they're not going to break, but they don't have the precision that the original Boglins eye mechanisms had, as far as I recall. When I was a kid, that original Boglin's eyes had a little bit of resistance to them in a good way, so that you could precisely move them back and forth and into the positions that you wanted. These eyes are very loose, and the moment you let your hand out of that puppet, the eyes go rolling back in one direction and stay there. And when you're operating the puppet, that eye mechanism is all over the place. It's very loose. Sometimes you see the eyes kind of going out of sync when you're moving it quickly. It's just not as precise a mechanism as I recall from when we were kids. Again, I'm gonna open it up to the possibility that I'm not remembering it well enough, but the eyes were the main event on the Boglin puppet. That was what made it a step above your average sock puppet or hand puppet. Boglins incorporated some of that ground floor tech that puppeteers had mastered in the 70s and 80s. It's not a fatal flaw, and I could be remembering it wrong, but I think I'm right, and it does make for a different experience. That's okay. They work just fine. There's no fault here. They're just a looser eye mechanism than what I remember. One of the best things I can say about the new Boglins is that not only do they retain their 1980s DNA, but their mainline prices are very affordable. You can get a full-size Boglin for $39.99 right now, which is amazing considering the prices some other toys are going for. And the range of Boglins is expansive, and they're all in stock on Big Bad Toy Store and other retailers. They're not difficult to acquire, and they are a true toy in every sense of the word. You can just have idle fun with this toy, and I imagine a bunch of kids would have fun with this as well, where traditional action figures might not hold any appeal for them. But these puppeteered monsters that have a way to interact with them, that have a way to imagine and spend time with that toy and get it to do what you want in your own headspace, that's invaluable. And that was always the magic of Boglins. And now they're back. And despite some of their differences, I think these are some of the best toys for your value right now on the market. So if you're an 80s nostalgist and you never had a Boglin, I never personally had a Boglin, my brother had one, but I'm kind of jazzed to have this one now. I like having my own Boglin. If you are an 80s kid or you're an early 90s kid that likes monsters and creatures, you could do worse than picking up a Boglin. These are fun. And they're not going to break the bank. And you can just pick whatever color scheme you want. Like I said, they've got the traditionally colored ones that are kind of throwbacks to the 80s. They've got the more Halloween and spooky looking ones. They've got the aliens. They've now got glow-in-the-dark ones. They've got all kinds now. It's pretty cool. So I might, just for nostalgia's sake, I might add Dwizork to the collection because they've released those traditional Boglins. And I have Dwizork. So I might as well see if I can get the new Dwizork, since I have some experience with the original Dwork from when we were kids. It's cool to see these available again, direct to consumer, and I hope that they're successful. I really do. So thanks for watching this, and we will see you on the next video.